From the dawn of the spoken word, storytelling has been the backbone of human culture, warning of looming dangers and evoking our most personal fears. What you're about to hear are the real-life experiences of everyday people, brave enough to share their terrifying tales. Tales where the horror hits close to home. I'm your host, Danny. Welcome to the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Listen, if you dare. Welcome back. We are the Hometown Horrors Podcast. Today is a bit of a selfish indulgence. We have on Kevin, who is formerly a guest of the Secret Society of Strangers podcast. When I had Josh, one of their members, on, while doing my due diligence, listening to a couple episodes of their show, I heard Kevin's episode. He is an experiencer of the targeted individual phenomena. The best way to describe it would be hearing voices, but it's more of an involuntary function of the mind. Kevin specifically has really intense stories about it, and I just knew I had to have him on the show after that. Without further ado, let's dive into it.
You know, I label myself as a targeted individual, but that label in itself fits so many other molds. And I mean, this thing has morphed into crazy amounts of paranormal activity, and it encompasses so much.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what's so fascinating about it. I think the closest comparison I would have is having like an earworm, a song that's stuck in your head. Like,
yeah, that is part of it.
Just over and over again all day long, but instead it's voices.
Yeah, and it's also music. So they will play music, and a lot of this stuff is shit I've never heard before. They'll play Indian chant music, like, hey, and I'm like, where the heck? Like, I don't know this stuff. But a lot of times it's whatever. So I have a 7-month-old at home, so she's listening to a lot of nursery rhymes. Old MacDonald had, and then 3 hours later, everything's quieted down. I can still hear it as if it's coming from the neighbor's house or coming from the kitchen. It's whatever part of the brain that is getting tapped into, the subconscious or the unconscious part of the brain that's holding all of these long-term memories. And a lot of these choruses, it's always 5 to 10 second clips of choruses, which essentially is, it's a mantra, a repetitive phrase that is said over and over and over again. And you know what this really taught me is the power in music, and the subliminal messaging that's in music and the choruses that get stuck in people's head. For example, that song, it's like, I don't give a F, I don't give an F. Well, now you have that stuck in your head and you don't even realize that's your new mantra in life, that you're going through life with that attitude. I used to listen to all kinds of trance music and EDM and, I had to kind of put it all aside. I listen to a lot of talk radio now, but any music that I do hear is usually just whatever's on the work radio or playing in the house on the television.
That's something you actually need to watch out for, too, because if you listen to enough of a certain genre of music, it will start affecting your mood.
Whatever this occurrence is, it's in me, and I'm picking it up from somewhere, and it's directed towards me, but it is most certainly not of me, because a lot of what is happening, it's not a part of my long-term memory. And it began at a time in my life when I was involved with drinking and drug activity, but 24/7. I mean, from the time that I wake up and go to sleep, and even in my dreams, I'm hearing them until I got sober. They made it known we're not going anywhere until you get your shit together, almost like we're tired of dealing with this crap.
It's like you have to be in total control of your mind from the moment you wake up to the moment you close your eyes. I have trouble maintaining a diet, and I eat maybe 4 times a day. Like, if I can't control myself 4 times, it's got to be so hard to maintain that discipline day in and day out.
Well, this is like exactly what other people need to hear. The conversation that we're having right now is so relevant. And thank you for your openness and understanding about this. The last podcast I did, it wasn't a disappointment because I understand his perspective and where he's coming from. He's coming from a place of complete and total not understanding. So like when I start telling him like, I've had experiences with light orbs lately, like they fly overhead, and I've had experiences with apparitions. His response to me was, well, how come I don't see orbs? I was like, what? Are you open to it? Have you ever tried to? Have you ever tried to meditate and get in touch with like an astral realm or like your spiritual self and like really open your mind up to this stuff? But you know what? I appreciate that too, to some degree, because the average listener is going to be asking themselves the same questions. Like, well, how does this guy know it's just not psychosis? Which is why I think it's very important with a lot of the videos I do to show my face. So it's like, all right, I'm obviously listening to a guy that's in his right state of mind and is very lucid in his thoughts and is sitting in his living room in his home and is taking care of his business and is not medicated and, that whole thing. Because most people that are going through this are highly intelligent individuals. And the more that I learn about this phenomena, the more people I speak to all over the world, from all walks of life, all affluence, gender, race, nationality, regardless of drug use in the past, break into this voice hearing aspect of spirituality, of paranormal activity. And it runs the same type of program. It's almost like a fear exposure program. It pushes you into facing your deepest, darkest fears about yourself. And it can be torturous until you come into a place of self-assuredness and self-worth that you can push through it.
Do you find in the variety of people's backgrounds that have experienced this, it's not something that's strictly drug related for a lot of people? What are the different avenues that people come to develop this?
Apart from the drug use, it seems to be an accumulation of guilt, an accumulation of shame. Trauma is a big trigger. Something that is keeping one tethered to the past. They are either in a state of arrested development and they're unable to push forward in life because they're completely tied to some traumatic thing that happened in the past, or they can't let go of past actions. And then what this thing does is it forces a person to actually face those things so that they can catch up with themselves and move forward into the future. Another common occurrence is meditation. Deeper states of meditation, people run into this problem. And I truly believe that what this is almost like an audible version of the yin yang in life, because that's what it does to the brain. You start hearing voices, and the voices are so conflicting in nature. It's these extreme polarities. You are the stupidest person we've ever met. You're the smartest guy on the planet. You're going to do great things with your life. What a piece of crap you are. It'll fluctuate quick. They go from friend to foe in 2 minutes. And it's almost like it'll speed up in intensity as time goes on. So when I first started hearing the voices, I would get very ego-feeding statements for like maybe a week on end. And, it would really like bolster me up. Like I'd feel great about myself. And then it would just be crushing statements that would really just trash me. Even that in repetitiveness, it would start to speed up. Instead of 1 week of ego-feeding statements, it would be 5 days. And then 5 days of nasty statements. And then 4 days, 3 days, 2 days. Until eventually it got down to like very conflicting statements all at once, where you're hearing simultaneous voices, sometimes 3 or 4 or 5 different voices, all saying very conflicting things. One's telling you you're the greatest person in the world. The other one's giving you all the secrets to the universe, talking about the Fibonacci sequence and time-space continuum. And then the other voice is telling you what a piece of crap you are and they can't stand your presence. And you're just trying to work and move through life and just be a decent, normal, functioning person and like have conversations with people with this craziness going on inside of your head.
Was there a rhyme or reason to how it would pivot? Like, would you maybe stumble a little bit into the store and you're like, oh, everyone saw that. You look like an idiot in front of everyone. Stupid. You should get like tighter shoes.
So it's definitely reflective to the individual's perception about themselves, right? So if you have very negative self-image, there's something about yourself that you can't quite pinpoint exactly what it is that's holding you back. The voices will directly circulate around that. So for me, one of my biggest fears was fear of other people's opinions. I mean, I lived my life according to what I thought other people thought of me. I really felt that poorly about myself as a man. Somebody that wasn't really doing everything that they should be doing in life, that I give an outward presentation. And if you could buy that presentation and I could convince you wholly in your mind that I was this person, well, then I am that person to me, even though I wasn't. So if you bought the lie that I was selling you, then I could be fulfilled in that lie. Then the statements will come. And I'm telling you, for months and months and months on end, every single thing that was said to me was, everybody here thinks, and it didn't matter what it was, right? Like, I'm going to make omelets for breakfast. Everybody here thinks omelets are stupid. Everybody here thinks that you're getting fat off of those, like constantly. And for the first few months, you're being torn. Maybe I won't make omelets. Do I want to make omelets? Omelets do make me look fat. You have to go through this process. Eventually, you get to the point where you're like, I really don't give a shit what other people think about me. I'm not responsible for the version of me that exists in other people's minds. Screw that. And that right there is the pillar of this process. It's not that they will come to you and reconcile your weaknesses. They exaggerate them and exasperate them beyond belief until you no longer have an emotional attachment to it.
It's just like being raised Catholic.
Yeah.
I went to Catholic school growing up, so I think that is what instilled the self-talk in my head. It's not the worst thing. You just judge yourself for leading things that you would see as immoral. And then later in life, I had like a really brutal breakup, and then it was just like, oh, everyone thinks you're ugly, nobody likes you. That was another aspect for me to like kind of torture myself.
Yeah.
And that was a thing I had to get out of at a certain point in my life. I actually remember the moment in my life I had stopped my negative self-talk. I kind of have it back now just because life's been a little tough over the last couple of years. But I also know that it's not worth beating myself up over.
No, I had a really negative experience when I was 16. I got a girl that was a little bit older than me, pregnant. By the time that I was 17, I was just starting my senior year in high school, and I was having my son. Well, I was attending a Baptist church outside of Philadelphia at the time. And I'm like, oh my God, I can't do this responsibility. Like, that anxiety and panic and like just sheer confusion. In that moment, that's when I began really developing that fear of what other people thought about me, right? My father was a deacon in the church, and this was an embarrassing thing for my conservative Baptist parent. So the pastor of the church, he comes over to our house and he says, listen, we want Kevin on Sunday morning to stand up in front of the congregation and tell the congregation what he did. Just admit that he got this girl pregnant. And looking back, I think his hope at the time was that the church would kind of come together in comfort. But when Sunday morning came around and I stood up, and my parents always sat in the very back pew. So, of course, everybody had to spin around in their pew. All eyes are on 16 embarrassed me. And I just stood there and cried. That was the catalyst for me really starting to get this inferiority complex that never stopped developing throughout the years. And I kept running from that, never able to really face it.
Yeah, it can become a prison of its own. I think it can start with parents, or if you have like a very interwoven community, like a church would be one of them sometimes. You're ostracized instead of helped. It's kind of the yin and yang of being part of any community, whether it's religious or social.
Exactly. And then that also leads into you living a life that's really not of your own accord, right? Because I then found myself doing things, not because they were fulfilling within myself, but because I thought that they would make my parents happy. I was the effect to everybody else's cause and never taking my own ship by the wheel until this happened and completely broke me free from all that programming that I had allowed to happen on myself.
Cold Case Western Australia is a new true crime podcast series produced on behalf of the WA Police Force Special Crime Squad. The series examines unsolved homicide cases, some dating back several decades, in the world's largest policing jurisdiction. You'll hear new case details and insights from the investigating detectives and forensic experts. There are now $1 million rewards attached to each unsolved homicide in Western Australia. You can listen to Cold Case Western Australia wherever you get your podcasts or by visiting the WA Police Force website.
And I think that's why I find your story so compelling. I can remember that too, just trying to break out of fear of how people perceived me and just live the life I want to live without shame. Even, starting the podcast, it's like, oh, are people going to think it's stupid? I want to hear people's scary stories. Are people going to think I'm weird? Am I outing myself as the weird person for having this interest? And it's like, I don't care.
Yeah.
You hit 30 and you're like, I'm going to be dead in like 70 years and none of this will have mattered. So I might as well just do what's fun for myself. The pandemic was a huge part of that too. At a certain point, I was just working from home and I was literally just going from my bedroom to my office out in the living room. And that was my whole week. You know what I mean? Like nothing's open. Everyone's quarantining themselves.
Yeah.
Life gets really boring and it gets really lonely. So it's like, I want to get out. I want to talk to people. It's one of the reasons why I started the show. And I just wanted to hold on to something I really appreciated in life.
As you should. I'm learning the more I get through this process. And I always like to use this analogy, like keys on a piano. You have each individual key, and each key plays its own tune. And it's not that any key is any greater or any worse than the key next to it, but each one is required to play its own tune. And one of the biggest problems I had is that I never knew how to get in tune. So I would mimic the tune of other people. I'd say, well, people appreciate the tune he's playing. Maybe I'll just start acting like that. That was a big thing with Christianity. I saw an example from a group of people that seemed very happy and shiny and well put together and successful. And I just wanted to be that. I just wanted to mimic that. And that's kind of what I did with my walk with Christianity. But back to the piano analogy, it takes the entirety of all the keys for that organ to play an entire melody. And it doesn't mean that I'm special, right? I'm no more special than any other key, but I am unique. I am unique in that I play my own tune. None of us are apart from, we're all a part of the same organ, right? We're all part of the same instrument, but we're all kind of required to find ourselves while we're going through this thing and learn how to play our own notes so that we can all play this thing beautifully together. And that's kind of how I view all of this, everything that's been happening with this. It's just been nothing but a process of really stripping away the facade that I used to present to everybody else and really coming in to find me. One of the things, especially going through this, I refer to it as the targeted individual experience. First, your brain becomes aware that it's under observation. And I always use Carl Jung. I always use his model of the brain. He says you have your ego, and then you have your personal unconscious, which is all your memories and the accumulation of your life experience so far. But then you have your collective unconscious. And this is the part of you that is tied into your ancestors. This is why prayer works. This is why meditation works. This is the part of our consciousness in each and every one of us that is tapped into something greater than us. Whatever your higher power is, this is what connects all of us as humans. So I would say that the collective unconsciousness of every man, that is the part that's not alone, right? Now, for some reason, there's a veil in between the personal unconscious and the collective unconscious that in our awake state of mind, while we're awake, like you and I talking right now, you're not aware of that. You're not aware that that part is going on in your brain. However, what happens with somebody that is a targeted individual is that veil is ripped. So now while they're in their awake state of mind, they're aware that their mind is not alone. So you can picture your mind. It's this place that is just free of persecution, free of consequences. You can think whatever the heck you want to think or envision anything that you wish to envision without any persecution, right? No repercussions. And then all of a sudden that's threatened. You are aware that your thoughts are not alone. You are aware that you're tapped into something else fully. You know that there's something else going on. Well, the brain can't make sense of this. Your awake state of mind can't make sense of this. It doesn't understand where this observation is coming from, this awareness of observation. So you seek an explanation outside of yourself. And this is reasonable. You feel like you're being watched, so you look for a reason outside of yourself. And this is where all the paranoia comes from. And this is why people think that their neighbors start watching them, or that the police are out to get them, or they start going through a phase of what is known as apophenia, which is essentially you're putting pieces of a puzzle together that don't exist. And the unfortunate reality about this part of the process is that loved ones get the brunt of it because people get the blame for it. Loved ones, neighbors, your family. You're desperately looking for an explanation as to why you feel the way that you feel. And then you'll start hearing voices. So you think the voices are coming outside of you, and they do sound as if they are coming outside of you. You'll hear them intertwined in ambient noise, running water, cars that are rolling down the street, whirring fans. So whatever part of your brain it is that filters out ambient noise, that part of your brain that just says, yeah, this is safe, don't pay any attention to it, that's where the voices are being spoken. That's the part that gets ripped wide open, and that's where the collective unconsciousness is. So essentially, everything that you hear in your ambient noise becomes onomatopoeias, and they get very negative. So now you actually think that there's somebody out in your street yelling at you, telling you to come out and fight. And the more that you feed into it, the more real it becomes to you. You go out there with your hands up in the air, and there's nobody there. Or there is somebody there, God forbid, and then that person's looking at you the same way that I would look at somebody that's using a snowblower as a lawnmower. What are you doing? They have no idea. But to you, in that moment of time, it's complete reality, and it makes total sense. And that's what's called gang stalking. People thinking that the neighborhood is out to get them or the police are out to get them. I can never say that gang stalking itself does not exist, because I've seen videos where people do seem to be getting chased down by cars. Like cars are just circling the block and honking at them just to harass them and annoy them. But
I've experienced something like that too. One night I was coming home from a friend's house, very rural area, and in that area specifically, there were a lot of reports of MS-13 activity at the time. And another car passes me, it's say 9 o'clock at night. This car, after it passes me, pulls directly into a parking lot behind me and then starts driving after me. So in my mind, I'm like, oh shit, this might be like an initiation ritual. The idea was that they run you off the road and then beat the shit out of you. I don't know. But,
oh my gosh, I remember this.
Yeah.
I do. I remember this.
I saw it coming and I just sped up and pulled down a road that I didn't think they would see me in, and I got away from it. But I remember that thought so vividly that like, oh shit, they're coming after me now. Right. Might have had nothing to do with me.
Yeah, right. And that, by all definition, is considered gang stalking. So a gang of people gather together, and the whole point of their coming together is to harass you enough to either change your behavior or move out of an area. But what I experienced was not that. What I experienced was completely in my mind. And whoever these entities are that were speaking to me were just saying things that I really had no choice but to believe. I remember one time I was walking through a town and they were telling me that they posted me on the town's Facebook, and they said that I was doing all these horrible things. So now I'm looking around at every single Tom, Dick, and Harry walking around looking on their phone, thinking that they're looking at me on their phone and they want to hurt me. Now I'm like sitting inside of a laundromat staring out the window like,
anybody
oh my God,
that looks
like,
at you too long, they know.
Right, yeah. And here's the other fascinating part about this. The voices, man, they run layers deep. What I hear is not all that's being spoken, because there's times where I may hear one voice and it's being friendly. It's talking about whatever, Kamala Harris, or it's just whatever present moment thing is going on. And then if I get in front of a whirring fan, I'll hear 3 or 4 other voices, and they're all talking about a completely different subject matter. And then I move away from the fan and I don't hear it. And then I go near the fan and I hear it. And it's like, how deep does this go? And how influenced am I being by the voices that I don't hear that are going on back there? My girlfriend went through this as well. She was being influenced by the voices, but she couldn't hear them. She would tell me, she said, no, I don't hear voices. And yet she would get these insane notions that her children were being kidnapped, that our car was being used as a mule car for a Mexican cartel, that all the police were pedophiles, just these insane, irrational, illogical notions that I know in her right state of mind would never be occurring. She's a midwife and she does very well for herself. I look at it now, it was almost like whoever is behind this, they were showing me how deep that this manipulation can get behind the scenes in the mind, and an individual doesn't even know. See, it really develops a lot of empathy in you when you see people that are, standing in line at Dunkin' Donuts or just on the street corner or screaming out loud at nonsense. And it's like, man, I know the turmoil that's going on in your mind and how difficult it is to rationalize it. You're just completely lost in that reality. They're hearing voices. They're having a debate that is now externalizing. Because I used to scream, especially when I didn't realize that it was all happening within my mind. I thought that it was some technology being used against me, satellite technology, or somebody with like a voice-to-skull V2K machine was transmitting thoughts into my head. And I'm looking for them. I'm like, how is this possible? Because my mind is not making this up. There's all kinds of just insane psychosomatic signs and symptoms that occur with this that just can't be explained by my mind is doing this to myself.
Persons of Interest is back, and it's bigger than ever.
That scream will echo in my head for many years.
Taser, taser, taser! She's going to shoot!
Oi! Shot fired! Shots fired, shots fired.
You got a gun on you!
He had the perfect aim.
I am absolutely stressed at that point. I have no idea where my officers are.
Persons of Interest available everywhere you get your podcasts.
So when would you say that this was most prominently part of your life?
When I first started hearing the voices, they came and went for years before they came 24/7, which was about 15 months ago. But for years, they would come for about a week and then they would leave. And then about 18 months ago, the periods started lasting longer. And at that time, it was very personal, very one-on-one. Like I recognized the voices, but I could just talk to them in my head. It was like your internal monologue becomes an internal dialogue. And they had actually diagnosed me as having OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, and that I had obsessive thinking, and that this was like one of the main problems for me not being able to break free from my addictive behaviors. And I used to believe or feed into everything that they said because I believed that it was some sort of a higher power. And I still do believe that it's some sort of higher power. Just my idea of what that higher power is has changed drastically. And I do believe that they were correct in diagnosing me as having obsessive compulsive disorder, or at the very least, obsessive compulsive thinking that was keeping me tethered to a lot of my addictive behaviors that I couldn't shake free from. But throughout the years, what I was doing was I was creating a dichotomy within myself. This person that knew how to be better, knew that I could be better, but was unable to do so. And the more that I was unable to do so, I was becoming acclimated to the very darkness that I despised. And the more acclimated to that darkness that I became, the more I hated myself for not being everything that I could be. And I knew that I should be. And the whole time I'm involved with my addiction, I'm not being the father that I'm supposed to be to the child that I had when I was 17. I'm not taking care of my responsibilities. I'm losing jobs. My parents are always worried about me. Like all of this accumulation over the years of just living that type of lifestyle. And the lies. When you're a drug addict or an alcoholic, you are lying about everything. What you're doing, where you're doing it, how much you're spending on doing it, why you're doing it, what time you were doing it at, who you were with. Like everything becomes a lie because you're embarrassed and you're ashamed and you want to hide everything. So take that and spread it out over 2 decades, Now, I would have periods of sobriety, sometimes for a pretty good length of time, and I would do well. I would do really well. I mean, you live in Virginia. I went to Liberty University in Lynchburg, Virginia. That was a time in my life when I was sober, but again, I was making all the wrong decisions for me because that's a Baptist Christian college. And I said, I'll go here, and that'll make my parents happy that this is what I'm doing. A couple of things happened, and I'll just be very transparent about this because this is also a big part of the accumulated guilt and shame in my life and how it got out of control. So I was actually very blessed when I moved to Lynchburg, Virginia, and I got a job working at the university as a carpenter. So they were paying all my tuition, and they were actually totally awesome about working around my work schedule. Clock out of work and go to class and then come back. Everything was going great. I was like, oh man, Kev, you really nailed it with this one. Good job. So I'm taking classes in speech communication because I wanted to get into some sort of public speaking. So I wound up relapsing towards the end of my second semester. I'm spending all my money on drugs again and ran out of money. So I called my brother. My brother lived in Jacksonville, Florida at the time, and he's 5 years older than me. And I said, hey, Billy, do you mind if I borrow like $200? I need them for school books. He was like, you sure? Like, you're doing all right? I said, yeah. So now I just spending more money than I need to, and I just really need to take some summer classes. So he Western Unions me $200. I go to the Walmart, I pick it up, I cash it. It immediately goes to drugs. It wasn't more than a week after I did that I left and I checked myself into a rehab. So I was allowed to have my phone, and my first night or second night while I was in there, my brother's calling me, and I'm looking at the caller ID, and it's him, and it's like 10 o'clock at night. And I'm like, he's probably drinking. He's probably pissed off at me because he found out by mom that I'm back in rehab, and he's just going to yell at me. So I didn't answer. And he's calling me that night, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning, 2 a.m. calling. So I shut my phone off. I will deal with him when he's not drunk and when he's not angry at me. So the next morning I get up and I get a phone call from the office. So I go in the office, and the guy that's sitting behind the desk hands me the phone, and it's my mother. And I said, hey, Mom, what's going on? And she said, I'm not doing well today, Kevin. And I said, what's the matter? And she said, your brother hung himself last night. I ripped the phone out of the wall, and I stormed out of the rehab. That sent me in a downward spiral for a long time.
That's fucking terrible.
Well, it was. But again, these are the things that I really needed to get over, right? So now you're seeing a pattern in my life of just this accumulation of I can do better. There's nothing about me that says that I can't live my best life. And yet I got all these things that I'm addicted to, that I'm attached to, that I'm clinging to, that I'm carrying shame over and guilt and embarrassment over. And I'm too worried about what other people think to be able to move through life clearly. And it took me a long time to get over that experience. And again, you have to come to a place where you say that wasn't my fault. I'm not in charge of his life. That's his decision that he made, a very selfish one that cost our family dearly, put my mother and all, everybody through hell. I am not the cause of him doing that. He struggled with depression for a very long period of time. And even though he was very successful on the outside, he was a computer networker for Halifax Hospital. And you can look him up on Facebook. His name was Bill Kosluck, Kosluc. And we have a page dedicated to him. He was a U.S. Marine and did 4 years in the Marines and 4 years in the Navy. I guess he just had a lot going on that he didn't want to talk about. Also struggled with drugs and alcohol and decided to check out early. But, you can't blame yourself for that stuff. Had that happened with me with the $200 or not, he probably would have followed through with the same decision. But when you're in that state of mind and you're already feeling like a piece of crap, it's like, oh, just pile it on. Just give me all the shame. I don't care. It gives me more of a reason to stay drunk. Terrible. Absolutely terrible. So, one of the things that happened with this experience that I went through is that it is so overwhelmingly negative. I mean, it is, by all accounts, by all human accounts, I'll say, invasive, inhumane, unorthodox. It's like your mind is being raped and you can't stop it. There was moments where I was taking the palm of my hand and slamming it into my forehead, just screaming, get the F out, because I couldn't stop it. You have no choice. You're either going to kill yourself or you're going to push through it. And maybe that experience with happening with my brother and seeing the detriment and consequences that caused. I saw what that put my mother through. He had 2 daughters and they grew up without a father and his wife. That was never an option for me. So what you wind up doing is you wind up taking every negative thing and figuring out a way to see the positive in it. You're stuck in a battle overcoming such a negative occurrence with trying to be the most optimistic person on the face of the planet. And then you learn to take everything that happens to you and firmly place it in one of 2 categories, education or enlightenment. That's it. Because everything that happens to us can fall into those 2 categories, education and enlightenment. And then what I came to realize as time went on is that wasn't a good thing to do. Constantly overcoming the negative aspect with the positive, I was still stuck in the polarity battle of everything. I'm stuck in the yin yang. I can't get through it. So what I had to do was find a neutral stance with this. Because as long as I sought to overcome with positivity, they sought to overcome me with negativity. So it didn't work. It's like a cat and a mouse game where essentially you're the victim or the perpetrator and you can switch between either role at any given time throughout the day. But as long as you're playing the role of the cat or you're playing the role of the mouse, you're assuming that the other role exists and that you're still engaged in a fight.
You never get relief. Yeah.
Exactly. Right. So you really need to get to a point where you just say, I have nothing for you. I require nothing from you and I have no fight with you. And you really have to get mental imagery in your head of an empty boxing ring. Or are you standing on a stage in front of an audience and all the audience has duct tape on their mouth and they can't say anything to you? Or the audience is empty? Or there's an entire audience and they're standing at an empty stage? This sort of imagery I really had to learn to develop within myself and repeat those mantras. A lot of mantra work is what got me through this. Because mantras aren't a rebuttal. They're not a defense. They're a state of mind. You're developing a state of mind that can withstand the test of time and can withstand negative influences that are coming at you. In the beginning, my mantras were very powerful. Like, I exist to overcome. I intend to inspire. I exist to forgive. I exist to love. And then it's like you're fighting with quicksand. The more you thrash around, the more you're going to sink. And you just have to learn to sit and be still. And this is where the meditation comes into play. This is where the understanding of the present moment comes into play. Because as long as I was stuck in the past, I'm living in my guilt and my shame and my embarrassment and my remorse. And as long as I'm thinking about the future, I'm living with anxiety and worry and fear and,
And meditation is how you ground yourself in the moment.
That's it. The essence of meditation is being immensely conscious of the present moment. That is what meditation is. You're having thoughts and you're just an observer unto yourself, a dispassionate observer unto your own thoughts. And I don't care. It could be the most vulgar, vile, disgusting thought that you have ever had in your life. Don't have an emotional attachment to it. Just let it go by as if you're looking up in the sky and the blank blue sky is empty thought. And then a cloud comes in and that's a thought. Just observe it and just let the thing slowly go by. Don't even give it a label. Don't give it a name. Sometimes there's going to be a lot of clouds. Sometimes there'll be no clouds. And this is very Buddhist philosophy, getting rid of the cycle of clinging and aversion, because that's what human beings do throughout the course of their day, right? We don't even realize that we're stuck in this battle, but we are stuck in it. We're saying, I like this. Give me more of that. I don't care what it is. More food, more porn, more money, more work, more friendship, more love, more whatever. Give me more of that. Or you're saying, I don't like that. Get that the heck away from me. Certain forms, certain teachings, certain people, certain places. As long as we're stuck in that cycle of clinging and aversion, we're not really in control of ourselves. We're just these impulsive things that are responsive to our environment all the times, and we're stuck in the polarity of everything. So the point is to be demagnetized. If you can picture, and this is another image that I have in my head all the time, is something bigger than a shoebox, like a shallow lip all the way around. And it's filled with flat magnets. And each one is polarized. And they're either going to push away or they're all going to pull towards each other. Go, bah, 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 bah. And the key is to be completely demagnetized so that you can just kind of move through the influences of life without being pulled in any direction. And that's your path of least resistance. That's what is known in Buddhism as right, like the right way, Samma, S-A-M-M-A. Or, a lot of what I just described is like a manner of wu-wei, the action of non-action, effortless effort. 15 months ago, I was sleeping in a tent under a bridge in St. Louis, Missouri. And to speak like this to you now, I don't even know where these words come from. I don't know where this understanding comes from. I don't know where this insight comes from. It's there. It's almost like it's there for everybody if you're willing to just shut your mind down and glean and just have it downloaded. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing to be a part of. It's torturous as hell to get through, but the insight that's gathered in the end and the person that's produced is miraculous. I was always in a state of preservation. So everything was always about me. Being able to take that and change it. Because, I lived the life of an alcoholic, and an alcoholic is described as an egomaniac with an inferiority complex. So I'm always stuck in this dualistic mindset. And then once that went away and I came into a place of self-centeredness and self-assuredness, it was like, well, I don't really give a shit about me anymore. What can I do for other people? That's when our good intentions, our good nature intentions, and our selflessness comes in alignment. And then you really start seeing fruition with the work that you put out towards other people because your heart's in it. You're not doing it for appraisal from other people. You're okay and content within yourself. You're doing it because you want others to be content as well. That makes all the difference in the world.
It's almost the feeling of you have to secure your own life mask before you can help others.
Yes, right. So the parable of the poisonous arrow, that's a very relevant one with the targeted individual experience. Because when it first starts happening to somebody, your brain is consumed with wanting to know who the heck this is. Is it the government? Am I just losing my mind?
Religious organizations?
Is it exactly? Is it NHI? Is it demons? Is it? A lot of people go the demonic route. The mind is consumed with wanting to know who is doing this. I guess because if you can figure out who's doing it, you can get it to stop. So the parable with the poisonous arrow. The Buddha taught it like this. If a man is shot with a poisonous arrow, and if such a man were to lie there and begin to question who shot this arrow, where did this arrow come from? What kind of poison is that? From how far of a distance did the man shoot the arrow? The man would die before he even took the time to remove the arrow. So the first thing you have to do is remove the arrow. Don't worry about where it came from. Don't worry about how fast its trajectory was. Don't worry about which direction it came. Don't worry about any of that. All those details go on the back burner. First thing you got to do is figure out how to remove the arrows safely without killing yourself. And I'm blessed and I'm fortunate that I took that route. I'm not going to say that I was smart taking that route because I talked to too many people that are still engaged in trying to figure out who this is and are going through the madness of being gang stalked still for 16 years, 20 years, 10 years, 5 years. And they're just going mad because their mind is consumed with that and not figuring out how to come into a place of equanimity to get the voices to stop.
Yeah, I can only imagine how terrifying that is. You mentioned that there were supernatural experiences with it or paranormal experiences.
That wasn't until a little bit later. I mean, as if hearing voices itself isn't, paranormal
Cause for alarm enough.
Right. So the whole thing started off initially with a vision. I got sober July 28th of 2023. So I'm coming up on 15 months. And I put myself into a rehab. Now, mind you, I had already detoxed. I had detoxed at Jefferson Hospital in Center City, Philadelphia, got everything out of me, clean, good to go. The voices, they went away. So I go into rehab and I said, I'm going to do it right this time. I just found out that my girlfriend was pregnant. And I said, man, I got to get it right. I got to get it right. So the voices came back my first night in my room in the rehab. And it was one of the male voices. So at all times, there's 3 main voices, a female and 2 males. And the one male and the one female sound similar to my age. And then there's the male sounds like he's probably in his 60s. All 3 of them are well-spoken, when they need to be. But the one male voice that sounded about my age, he said, "Are you ready, Kevin?" And I just remember remaining silent. And my room literally turned into a planetarium of stars, planets, complex geometrical patterns that were morphing in itself and out of itself, and then faces flashing in front of me. Alien faces, human faces, almost like hockey mask kind of faces, and then scenery, mountaintops with trees and tree lines. And the weird part about this was it didn't matter if my eyes were shut or if my eyes were open, I would still see it, which tells me that the entire thing was happening in my mind or was at least being projected into my mind from elsewhere. Yet, at the same time, it would thin out so that it would just be like as thin as a pencil and then fan open and cover the entire room. But yet it wasn't in my room. Somehow this was happening in the part of my mind that processes what I see, my sight perception, and that's what it was overlaying. So that was the first paranormal thing. And then that's when the voices started going and going and going. The next paranormal thing that happened was an apparition appeared. It was the end of the day one day. I was just laid down for bed. I literally just laid down my head. And then directly in front of me, there was a blue, ghostly kind of, I don't want to say it was male or female. There was no gender. And I had an emotion of reciprocated peace and love towards this entity, whatever it was, which I've only experienced towards females in my life. So at the time when it happened, I associated it with a female presence, but that was only because of the emotional attachment to the apparition itself. And looking back at it now, that would be erroneous to say that. So it reached out, and with its index finger and thumb, it seemed to almost pluck something out of my forehead and then run the 2 fingers down the center of my face, across the bridge of my nose, onto my lips, and then place something into my mouth. And you can feel it. It's like a vibratory touch, as if you're taking an electric toothbrush and running it down the center of your face. Whatever frequency it is, when it breaks through, it feels like a vibration. That heavy, very heavy. Yeah. Almost like if I was looking in a mirror, I could see my skin moving. And then it went away. Then it was silence. And I remember just laying there like, that was special. That was something special.
Did it have distinct features, or was it kind of ephemeral, like a shape more than a...
Just a shape, yeah. But it was definitely humanoid. A head with a neck and a torso and limbs and arms, but it was blue. So that,
so more of like an aura in the shape of a person, more so than like, you could tell there's like a mustache or something.
There was really no aura. The actual presence of the entity itself was completely blue. I mean, this has led into astral projection. This has led into visions, like a lot of visions. And the astral projection and the visions for me are always in blue. Everything that I see, the outline of scenery is always highlighted in like a neon white blue with all the details in like a bluish hue, like duller colors, kind of like detail and everything. And I went through a phase with this where the color purple covered everything just out of nowhere. It would happen at night while I was driving. I thought somebody was messing with my vehicle and actually put purple lights underneath of my car as like a trick. I pulled the car over. I'm underneath the car looking for purple lights, and it was all projections in my head. So up until the light orbs started happening, everything can be explained away with it's all in your head. It's just some sort of signal, or you're connected into some other part of consciousness, and it's commingling with your visual perception of reality. And then I started getting visited by light orbs. And if I shut my eyes, you don't see them. They're a part of my environment. So I start work every morning at 4 o'clock in the morning. I'm a forklift operator in a warehouse. And I work 4 in the morning until 12 o'clock in the afternoon. And I have a nice back deck on the back of my apartment. We're on the second floor, and I have a hammock out there. So I'll get up at 2:30 in the morning. I'll make a cup of coffee or a cup of tea, and I go out there and I'll start to meditate. And my morning meditations are usually one of gratitude, thank you for everything. Thank you for what I have now. Because again, 15 months ago, completely homeless, shattered, broken human being. Today, because of this, fully functioning member of society, great present, sober father to my 7th-old baby, insured, fully employed, taking care of my responsibilities. All of my amends have been made. So I'm very grateful, needless to say. So I give out just thank you, a meditation and a prayer of gratitude and thankfulness. Usually it'll start off with a bright flash in the sky, as if a star itself has quadrupled in size and taken your picture. And then usually within the next 1 or 2 minutes, light orbs will start whizzing overhead, doing unbelievable amounts of speed. And I don't know if they glow and then come ripping across and then they turn off the light, or if what they're doing is coming out of a dimension into our dimension and then back into another dimension. It's about the size of a tennis ball or a softball, and they'll fly overhead about maybe 40 feet high for about 100 yards, gone. And then another one will come, and then another one. And 95% of the time they're white. And I'd say about a month ago, there was a blue one. Sometimes there'll be a slow UAP that's not flying that fast. It'll just come in, and it almost looks like a donut. It's a very plasmoid looking thing with like a hollow middle, and that will come across the sky very slow, and then the light will go out.
Do you feel as though you're contacting these things, or that you're getting yourself into a state of mind where they would come to you? Not to digress too much, but I've interviewed paranormal investigators that whenever they investigate a haunt, they'll also try to make an alien contact too at the very end, because there are a lot of hauntings that have alien activity associated with it.
Yeah.
And after one such occurrence, they went outside, they did the alien contact ritual, and then days later, a light orb visited each of the people that were doing this. They were driving a car, and it went through the windshield at them and just threw them.
Yeah, it's beautiful. I mean, I open up my door, and before I even get on the hammock, like I haven't even gotten into a state of meditation yet. As if it is that connected with me at all times, it knows he's coming out. Like, this is how this has always been for me. It's very responsive to me in the present moment. And I would say that's because the mind is just filled with clutter. If you can erase your mind of all the clutter and remain focused on one thing, this is my intention, this is what I'm going to do. Because I believe consciousness anyway is omnipresent. It's everywhere all at once. And this is why things like remote viewing work. So whatever it is that us humans are tapped into, there are others that are already there that are aware of our presence. And there's a lot of muddied waters. Picture a hoarder, and they hire you to clear out their home. And you go to the house and you open up the door and you look in, and there is just shit packed everywhere. I mean, floor to ceiling, newspapers and books and furniture and like old workout equipment. And like, you get anxious. You're like, I don't even know where to start. I don't even know where to start clearing this crap out. But if somebody hires you and they say, listen, I need you to move all the furniture out of my house, and you open up the door and the house is completely empty except for one chair sitting in the middle of the room. Well, now you know exactly where to go. You know exactly what needs to be done to empty out the house, because all the other clutter is already out. And that's what living in the present moment should be like, and all that other baggage. Why am I doing this? Why am I here? What is my purpose? What does this person think about me? Am I good enough? Is my job good enough? And, does my girlfriend think I'm good enough? Man, I was a shitty dad. Was I not? Like all these things that just bog us down as humans that are so freaking unnecessary. When you can get rid of all of that and just clear your pure intention, right? Because we have our intention that we're aware of, but that's always laced with some shit, It's always laced with ulterior motives, right? But if you can get down to your pure intention, that humble part of you, that pure, raw, undiluted part of you that just wants to be thankful, that just wants to let the universe know that you are aware that you're part of something much bigger, that you're not special, but you're unique, and thank you for my uniqueness. A mutual, dispassionate observation of one another. That mentality right there, everything is cleared out. Your heart's in tune, and you're not living in a state of expectancy or non-expectancy, because that has a lot to do with it too. A lot of this, especially when you're dealing with NHI, it will play against what you expect, because you don't get what you expect in life, right? You don't really get your desires in life. You don't get what you deserve in life. You get what your intentions deserve. You really got to get down and work on what your intentions are with wanting to visit with NHI, and what you want to do with yourself, and even with this podcast, and what you want to contribute to the whole. That's the clarity that's needed for instantaneous arrival.
There's that expression, I think I'm going to butcher it right now. It's like expectation is the opponent of happiness.
Oh, I like that.
If you have all these preconceptions about what your day should be, what your life should be, you're not able to appreciate things in the moment. Like objectively, most people are living pretty good lives. You know, you got clean water to drink every day, a warm bed to lay in. That's more than some people alive right now have.
Yeah, I always say expect nothing except everything.
Yeah,
that's good. Yeah, it's a good way to live. So such an extraordinary circumstance must lead to an extraordinary outcome, right? But that type of thinking will have you believing that you are extraordinary or you are worthy to be seen as extraordinary. And this is all very ego-feeding stuff. 15 months ago, I was sleeping in a tent under a bridge in St. Louis. You know, the type of life that I've lived and the mistakes that I've made, there's absolutely no reason why this can't happen for anybody. It's just humility. That's all it takes is a little bit of humility. And the unfortunate part about humility is that you can't simply wish to be humble. One must be humbled. And that's what happens with this.
That sounds like it took a lot to gain that perspective.
Yeah, but this was a very well orchestrated procedural event. On my Reddit page that I have, I wrote an entire analysis of the experience. It was 5 distinct phases that I went through, which started off with the gang stalking phase. And then it went through like a codependent integrity phase, because now you have this thing that's a part of your life and you're relying on this higher power. You know, if integrity can be defined as the things that you do and nobody else is looking, well, that's out of the picture. That's not part of the equation anymore. You're always observed, right? And that seems like something terrible. But yet, if you look at it, Christianity and most major world religions are based on the same principle, that there is an omnipresent, omniscient, and an omnipotent God that is watching over you and has the number of the hairs on your head counted at all times and knows everything about you. But what this did was it took me from a state of believing that, and it eliminated faith. I went from believing into knowing. Faith went out the window. But then when this happened, my integrity became a codependent integrity. They were very benevolent in the beginning of this, and then it moved into a different phase, you know, and then they started getting very malicious and malevolent. And that was to break that dependence on them, because you're not supposed to go through your life completely relying on somebody else for your own sense of morality and moral uprightness. You know, you got to make the right decisions in the moment. Not for somebody else, but for you, because you know it's the right thing to do. And so then I went through that breaking period. Then there was a paranormal phase where all this paranormal activity started happening, as if to say, what do you want us to be? And they actually said that to me one time, because I was in such frustration, like, what is this? What is this? And it got quiet. And again, the male voice is always the voice of reason. The other ones are just chaos. But he'll come in and I'll say, Kevin, what do you want this to be? As if it can be anything. As if whatever you believe this to be, we can do that. Do you want this to be ghosts? We can do that. Do you want this to be the government? We can do that. Do you want this to be aliens? We can do that. My response in that moment, I remember very vividly, was I only want this to be exactly what it is, because I don't want to lie anymore.
Yeah, don't garnish my perception at all.
Right. And that could have either been the best decision I made or the worst decision I made, because what that did was it prolonged the chaos. Because then they began to play every role to show me that they can be all these things and manifest them physically. They'll sway your mind into believing wholeheartedly that they're one thing. Like they'll just lead you down dead end after dead end after dead end of thinking with no dead end sign in sight, just so you slam your head into a brick wall. But you learn something with each one of these dead end roads that you go down. One of my mantras that I had to really develop in the state of mind was, I don't know, nor do I expect myself to know. And then I quote by Socrates, I know that I am intelligent because I know that I know nothing. These concepts are the ones that you really need to get into your head, because the man that knows everything can learn absolutely nothing. You can't tell him anything. He already knows, right? So you got to humble yourself. It's a process of releasing your arrogance when you're humble enough to say, I don't know. And it's difficult to do that with this because it is so attached to your mind. By all accounts, you should know, right? And what it does is it forces you into finding a cure without really knowing what the ailment is, right? It's a whole reverse order of things that happens with this process.
So you mentioned that there are 3 distinct voices. If they have a sense of morality, that would imply that they have personality too.
The female voice was very supportive initially, very understanding and very kind, and wouldn't say much. Then as the months went on, she became very almost malicious. It was almost like a relationship was developed, and now it was like, okay, well, now you need to break this relationship. And that seems to be a lot of the MO for a lot of this. An attachment is made, a very deep, personal, subconscious attachment is made, and then you are forced to have to break it off and ignore it. And this is how addiction is broken. And this is how I've been able to stay sober and not go to AA meetings or NA meetings or take medication or therapy. This in itself was the best therapy I could have ever gotten. When something attaches to your brain that is more addictive than the chemical hooks of a substance, it doesn't die down. It doesn't fade away. There's no half-life. There's no withdrawal. It's just there. And it's there all the time. You don't have to pay for it. You don't have to do anything for it. It's just always there. And then you have to figure out a way to break your mind free from it. There's no other greater addiction on this planet that a man can overcome than that addiction. And it's not even an addiction that's of your own voluntary actions. That's where the strength comes from. I named the female Nikki. I named the one male Dan, and I named the other male Chris. And I'm sorry that I did that because, you know, that expression, when you label me, you negate me. When things really started getting bad, when I started going through a very dark time with these voices, anytime I would say one of their name, I would have a negative connotation attached to it, like a derogatory term like bitch or you dick or what an asshole. So that it gotten to the point where I would say like Chris and then asshole would just be attached to it. What I realized I was doing with giving them names was personifying them. They're not meant to be personified. This whole thing is a complete orchestration that is meant to teach you how to overcome your addictions and your personal problems in life. So that had to go away. I had to stop fighting. I had to stop personifying them. I had to really just put them into a box in one accord of something that is meant to be ignored. And I am meant to push forward in my life and live happy, healthy, and strong and ignore all the bullshit that's happening in the background. Literally, quite literally, ignore the background noise in life and push forward. Now, the one voice, Dan, when it first started, you know, you're assigning roles to these things. It seemed like he was the head guy and that the other two were like his followers. Like this is some sort of teaching thing that was happening. The second that you think they're any one thing, they'll completely switch the roles on you so that you think that there's something else. And then they'll switch the roles on you again. A lot of times you have to go through this process before you really start saying like, all right, this is all just a giant orchestration, theatrics that's meant for me to smash my head against the wall so I learn to get over myself and not have attachments in life.
Yeah, it's like being forced to run 100-mile marathon before you like can walk down a road.
Yeah.
You have to bite off way more than you can chew just to handle something regular.
Yeah, but I didn't even know what a targeted individual was when this first started happening. I didn't know what it meant to really hear voices in this way. I didn't even know what a tulpa was. You know what a tulpa is?
Yeah, but I think for viewership, it'd be good to describe it. It's like a thing that you personify to the extent that it becomes real.
Exactly. It's thought form. It's a practice in Tibetan Buddhism. It's almost like an imaginary friend where if you can imagine whatever sort of entity that you want and then give it form, give it appearance, give it personality, give it character, give it a voice, and then just keep molding it over and over and over in your head, that eventually it will take a physical manifestation. And these are all just different labels of the same phenomena. I was going through this alone. But then when I started getting online and figuring out what a targeted individual was, I realized that I wasn't alone. And I did the same thing that somebody would do if they were trying to put a lot of bulk on and muscle. Go to the gym. You're not going to go to the weakest guy in the gym. You're not going to go to the guy that's 110 pounds that can barely lift 30 pounds soaking wet. You're going to go to the biggest dude in the gym and say, how did you do that? And that's what I did. I went on and I found these online forums and I went right to the head people that were seasoned, that were experienced, that have gotten through this process. And I said, where are you at now? Are you still hearing voices? Are you still getting evoked states of emotion and fear? And every single one of them that have gotten through this say the same exact thing. What you're experiencing is an angel in demon's clothing. What you're experiencing is a sheep in wolf's clothing. This is going to seem like a very negative thing, but if you can push through it, you're going to be the greatest version of yourself that you didn't even know existed. And that, for me, that was my hope the entire time. And that eventually did come into fruition, and that was true. But a lot of people just refuse to see it that way, and they've refused to believe it. But, you know, the subreddit that I run is entirely focused on that, dealing with the psychological aspects of this and not the technological aspects of it, and helping people get through it and become better because of it.
Yeah, there's another expression that brings to mind, too. It's sometimes the worst thing that ever happened to you is the road to you being your best possible self and living your best possible life.
Yeah, these very subtle occurrences that happen in life often wind up being the greatest opening of doors. You know, a lot of times, like, very little pieces of a puzzle are happening behind the scenes, and then they come together and you're like, oh, that was slick. I didn't even see that happening. You know, it's like nice. I'm always curious when it comes to phenomena, if what we're experiencing is all a part of the same underlying origin, or if it's just a very widespread, multi-layered variety of phenomena. They all somehow seem to remain hidden from us. Here's what makes me think that there's an underlying theme to all of this. I can write a post for social media, and I can take that post and I can post it in a targeted individual group. I can post it in a telepathy group. I can post it in experiencers. interdimensional NHI, Hearing Voices Network, Starseeds, aliens. Like, I can post it in a wide variety of communities, and it's understood in every single community. The only difference is between these communities is our labels that we have towards things. Instead of V2K, which is what a targeted individual will say, somebody might say telepathy, somebody might say channeling, somebody might say demon, depending on your spiritual. It's these labels that we have towards things that create these barriers between all of us, and that create a stigma where one group won't want to hear anything from the other group. Yet you're both experiencing the same exact problem. I do my best to try to break that wall down and show everybody it's the same thing. You're just using different terminology for it.
It sounds like people intellectualize this as a million different things. It could be the government, it could be a religious association, aliens, their voices outside yourself. You can go down any rabbit hole and kind of find evidence for anything it might be. Yeah. Where are you right now with this?
So a big part of this is dream manipulation. I experience lucid dreaming with this, where to me, there is no difference between this reality and that dream reality. None whatsoever. It is there, and it is complete with emotion, pain, with sensory percept, with everything. It's like another reality that coincides with this one. There's a lot of work that's being done by this woman. Her name is Dr. Leslie Ellis, and she's a dream clinician. And she has not theorized, but proven that at all times we are dreaming. Not like we're living in a dream right now, you and I, as we're speaking, this is a dream, but you are dreaming right now as you're talking to me. At all times, we are creating a whole other perception of this reality in our head that we utilize and we are inserted into to help us cope with this external reality. And what I believe happens is that reality that we create in our heads, this active imagination, is actually an interactive imagination, that we are not alone in it, the same as you and I are not alone right now, the same as when you were dreaming, you're speaking to people, you know who they are. There's a whole backstory there. Otherwise, you'd be confused as hell. When you're dreaming and you're in an environment, you don't question why you're in that environment most of the time. You know why you're there. You know the people that you're talking to. The only time you don't know them is when you wake up and you're in this reality. But in that moment in your dream, you are aware of where you're at, what you're doing, why you're talking to them. There's sun there. Like, it's an entirely different reality that you don't question because there is a backstory to it. This is what eliminates confusion in our life. Had you and I, prior to this conversation, not set up a time and a place to meet and get together, I would have no clue what I'm doing right now. But because there's a past and there's a history with this, and we created this whole backstory and a narrative to come to this present moment in time speaking, I'm not in a state of confusion. The same exact thing happens in our dreams, as if there is always this ongoing saga, this ongoing narrative. And what I believe is that is multi-layered, because I drop down in my dreams, in these lucid dreams, and some are very fear-based, as if that is the environment for me to face my perception of this reality in the utmost of fear and overcome. And then there's ones where the physics of it all doesn't seem to work. I'm stuck, like I can't move. Gravity seems very heavy, and I fluctuate between these dreams. These are entire other recreations of this reality. And what I believe happens is there is a confluence sometimes with people that are labeled as schizophrenics, with people that are labeled as experiencers, with people that are labeled as targeted individuals and voice hearers, is that there is a confluence of these realities, and the two overlap, and this is when chaos ensues. And it depends on how your perception of life is. If you're a very pessimistic individual, if you view everything as very negative, if you think the world's out to get you, well, the recreation that you're making in your mind is exaggerated beyond belief. It has to be that much more fearful for you to get through this one. And when the two come together, it is literally a living nightmare. And it is only through the practice of equanimity, meditation, calmness of mind, evenness of mind, that we calm down these other realities in our head that we're creating, where those other versions of us that are back there communicating with other entities, communicating with other humans, communicating with other realities, come into a place of self-assuredness. And then that begins to manifest into this one as well. It's almost like a multiverse in our own heads, or a multi-layered dimensions in our own heads, that we are responsible for the version of us that exists in those dimensions. When people meditate and they begin to break into this is what happens. People do excessive amounts of drugs. People do DMT, and they break into these other dimensions, and they're speaking with other entities. It's always there. It's all happening all at the same time simultaneously. And I believe that is what this is. And when we see things like UFOs that are breaking through more and more and more, I believe that there is more and more of a confluence of these realities that are breaking into ours interdimensionally.
Yeah. It's kind of a basic answer, because I'm following everything in my head, and it's just so many ideas flashing by. I don't know if it's like a Buddhist or Tibetan expression, but there's like there are three selves. There's the you that you think you are inside your head. You know, you're cherry picking information based on your five senses, based on everything that's interacting with you. And that is who you are inside your head. But it's not your full self. It's information that you're vetting. And then there's the you observed by the world, the you that everyone else sees, which isn't the full picture. And then there's the you that you actually are, if you recorded every single moment from your birth to your death.
Right.
All three of those, like, you'll never actually see the true version of yourself.
Well, I think, and I totally agree with that, you know, that within every individual, there are essentially three individuals. And what that comes down to is self-image, right? Within yourself, there is your negative self-image, there's your pretend self, and then there's your actual self. And your negative self-image is this you with all of your baggage, with all of your guilt, your shame, and your embarrassment. It's the part of you that you want to hide from everybody else, that you try and cover up. And then there's your pretend self. And this is the part of you that you want other people to believe. This is the life of the party. This is the happiest guy, the most successful. It's basically the Facebook version of you. And then there's your actual self. And this is the person that you really are at this present moment in time. And here's the problem. Most people are so ashamed and so afraid to face the negative self-image that they spend an entire life in the pretend self and never even give themselves an opportunity to find the actual self. So how do we do this? The first thing you have to do is forgive yourself. You really have to forgive yourself. And this is why Christianity works. Even Jesus understood that forgiveness is paramount. A person cannot move through in life unless they feel forgiven for what they did. That's just facts, unless you're just a complete psychopath. So you have to forgive yourself. You know what? I'm a human. To be flawed and fucked up is to be perfectly human. It's okay that I messed up. Forgive yourself for it. Feel regret. It's okay to feel the regret, but don't live in the guilt. These things that we did in our past, they're great for reflection, but it's not meant for residence. Let it go. And this is how we start to move away from the negative self-image. And self-image in itself is so important because it serves as a self-fulfilling prophecy in that our actions and behaviors are a direct result of the person that we believe that we are. So if you can learn to get rid of that negative self-image, well, next you have your pretend self, this person that you're trying to give off to the world. Now you have to come into a place of self-acceptance. And we do that by eliminating the extremes. I'm not the dumbest guy in the room, but I'm not the smartest guy in the room. I'm not the ugliest person on the planet, but I'm not the greatest looking person on the planet. I may never be who I always wanted to be, but I'm certainly doing better than what I once was. We have to come into this place of present moment acceptance within who we are. That's how we come into this actual self. We eliminate the past. We eliminate the future. We eliminate this projection we want other people to view us as. We accept who we are at this present moment in time, and then we come into our actual self. A lot of the people that I deal with are living in fear because they believe that they're under surveillance, which is why a lot of them are on Reddit because it's completely anonymous. They're still very fearful about what to say. I'm afraid to type this because of what will happen. For me on my end, the more that I, a self-proclaimed targeted individual, can show my face. I mean, I post pictures of me and my girlfriend and our daughter as we're growing together as a family, and it's important for other people to see that. I'm not being persecuted. I'm not being shut down by the government. I'm not being attacked at my home. Like all of those things that are in your head or that are being manipulated in your head or even orchestrated are obstacles meant for you to overcome. This whole thing is meant for people to learn how to overcome fear. And the only thing that we have to fear in this life is our response to stimuli. That's it.
Another expression, you can't control what happens to you in life, but you can always control your reaction.
Yes, exactly. Sometimes it's very difficult with this, though, because there is directed energy that occurs with this, which is where you get the terminology like directed energy weapon. People do feel like they are being attacked by some sort of energy. And I can't necessarily say that we're not, because it's painful. You know, if you want to look at it through like the lens of like Hinduism, this would be like your chakra opening. Some would say it's a Kundalini experience, but I mean, it feels like you're being stabbed or poked with a hot iron, or you're getting like precision itch spots that you just, oh my gosh, like it's like you're getting hit in the same spot by 1,000 mosquitoes, just digging away at you. Swelling a lot of times, like jaw pain, muscle spasms. But yet I've also experienced the chakra openings, my third eye completely opening, my crown chakra opening, my root chakra, my chest and my diaphragm vibrating. I'll get into a state of meditation, and as I'm coming out of that meditation, my entire body is just vibrating. My whole body, everything is just... So whatever energy it is that I'm going into and bringing it back out with me, a lot of times when that vibration stops, there's parts of my body that hurt. And they usually are around an area where maybe I have like a tooth that needs to be worked on, or I have like a bad joint or something like that.
So like identifying a part of your, like a stress test of your entire frame?
Man, I really wish I knew. And I do like a little bit of research with this energy, and people that have harnessed it and do like healing work with it, And they'll say it's very dangerous. It's the yin yang in life. That's what that energy is. It's like a very low frequency that we as people resonate with. That's just a part of our planet. It's a part of, everything. It's always been there. And when that starts to move through us, we can actually learn how to begin to like harness that energy. The people that I read about, or I'll even watch documentaries about them online, they'll say it's very dangerous to harness this because it is both polarities. It's the understanding of negative and positive in life and the energy that comes with that. Essentially what it is it's the Tao, but it's also the understanding that the concepts of negative and positive are ultimately the same concept, and that's the concept of manifestation. In as much that if you want to look at Mara, which is like the Buddhist version of Satan, if Mara is the full embodiment of evil and Buddha is the full embodiment of the concept of good, ultimately both are the same concept. And that is the concept of manifestation, because we need the polarity of evil and we need that polarity of good for all the gray in between as part of our education and enlightenment in this life, for things to manifest for us to learn. In that aspect, there really is no such thing as good or bad, as they're both completely reliant on one another for our experience. That right there is the essence of non-duality. When you can stop looking at things as good or bad. Through that, you can begin to view these entities that are doing this, that are in charge of this, for lack of a better term, program, fear exposure therapy program. They operate in this gray area where they're just completely hell-bent on balance.
Yeah, whether it's good or bad, it's how you use the experience.
Exactly. It's what you learn from it, because it's all there for you to learn, the good and the bad. Even that expression, we're not a human entity trying to achieve a spiritual experience. We're a spiritual entity having a human experience. We're just here for the process of becoming better spiritually. And at some degree, to some other plane, all of us are actually there watching this whole thing transpire and unfold. And who's to say that I didn't choose this? Who's to say that I didn't choose to be Kevin Orr that's sitting here right now having a discussion with you, and I chose to go through everything in that life so that I could have a fuller understanding of the beauty of manifestation. Yeah.
And that's one of the most beautiful things I think about the human race, is that we can apply narrative to anything. And if we can control how we conceptualize that narrative, we can essentially control our way through reality, the reality that we're dealt.
Absolutely.
But yeah, this was profound. And I hate having conversations like this because I have so many things I could say and like so many questions in my head, but it's so hard to get even one out. But I knew from the episode I heard on the other podcast that this would be a great conversation. I was absolutely not disappointed. This was fantastic. Man. Thank you for coming on.
Great experience, man. I'm very thankful to share it.
I think a lot of people are going to benefit from hearing this from you too. Everybody struggles in their own life. Just hearing how, you can decide your own reality and then walk towards the life you want is so powerful and so important.
Yep. Awesome, dude. Well, thank you very, very, very much for having me on. I enjoyed this conversation and conversing with you immensely.
I wish I could have added more, but still my mind's just processing everything as it said, and I feel like I get a little behind.
That's all right.
So where can people find you? I know you have a YouTube channel, Reddit board.
I do. So if you wanted to stop by, my Reddit channel is Positive TI, targeted individual, Positive TI on Reddit. It's an interactive community where it is very monitored. It's heavily monitored. I will say that, because you get a lot of people that are just anonymous assholes. Some 15-year-old kid sitting in his mother's basement that wants to go onto a subreddit like that and just call everybody lunatics.
Choosing violence and trying to hurt people.
Exactly. And I don't tolerate it. So if somebody wants to come on and just read the post and what people go through, without commenting or anything, just to kind of have a better understanding and gather some empathy and compassion towards what people go through, that would be fantastic. Again, that's Positive TI. And that's basically been like a journal for me too. I post on there regularly, and I started doing interviews or discourses with other targeted individuals at their homes for like an hour, face-to-face, online, and going over our experiences. And it's amazing, the similarities. What I experienced in Philadelphia, somebody in Italy experienced the same exact thing, word for word, vision by vision, sequence by sequence. Absolutely phenomenal. When you see stuff like that, you understand that there is no possible way it's shared psychosis. Like, this is a very sequential procedural event that happens to people all over the world. I speak to people from Australia, England, Canada, Italy. I had a guy from Italy on my discourse that moved from Russia, did not speak Italian. And when he started hearing voices, they were speaking to him in Italian, and he had to use Google Translator to figure out what the hell was being said to him. And once he translated it and wrote it down, it was the same exact stuff that was being said to me. I don't have an explanation for that. Eventually, they switched over to Russian, and started speaking Russian to him. But it. Yeah. It was, bizarre. So bizarre. Yeah, and I have the YouTube channel, but even if you just go on the Reddit, all the YouTube channel links are on there. And yeah, I mean, that's the biggest thing is the Reddit page, because that's been like an interactive journal for me from the beginning. It's definitely growing. I think we're up to like 440 members. I started it 8 months ago, but it's not about the amount of members. I would rather have a dozen members that all sincerely want to help one another learn how to be better fathers and parents and sons and coworkers and members of society and help each other out than a community of 10,000 people that all they want to do is talk about torment and madness and technology and torture.
That doesn't get anything.
And Illuminati, Satanism, CIA, Judaism, like FBI, like all that crap. People just get lost in it. And you got to stay focused on what is most important in life. I am the person that my daughter needs me to be right now. And that's where I do my best to steer people's heads towards that and the voices that they're hearing, to overcome those voices and keep them focused on productivity and the human experience in itself. That's my main goal with all this.
So thanks again for coming on, man. And I hope you have a good night, and I'll be in touch.
Yeah. All right, man. I'll talk to you later.
Take it easy, buddy. Thank you.
All right. Bye.
Hello, everyone. Happy Halloween and happy second birthday to Spooky Show. It's really hard to believe we're at the end of season 2 already. This has been such an intense journey, and I just want to thank everybody that's been involved with it thus far. All of our amazing guests, all of our incredible listeners. We are Spooky Show. But at this point, I think we can take a break from horror for the rest of the year. If you live in America like I do, our presidential election as of today is exactly a week away. And regardless of what side of the poll you fall on, I think we can all agree that this has been a strange and stressful time, which is why I want to encourage everybody to just enjoy the next 2 months of 2024. Regardless of whether or not you can stand them, spend more time with your family, reach out to old friends, just value the connections you have with other people, and at the very least, be good to yourself. I don't think I'm speaking out of turn when I say that 2024 was kind of a crazy year. For me personally, this year brought a lot of things that I was not expecting, and it definitely got tough at times. There were definitely points where continuing the show probably should not have been my first concern, but I didn't want to abandon something that I loved and was passionate about because of whatever negativity may be going on in my life. And every time I pushed through that barrier, every time I pushed to get the new episode released, I was always happy with the result and glad I did it. That being said, the show is going on hiatus until the end of the year. Olivia and I have a brand new 3-month-old puppy with another one on the way, and I want to dedicate myself to raising them properly and just enjoying the time I have with them while they're little. Not to mention I have a couple vacations coming up, and I just don't want to worry about shaking down folks for interviews. So we'll see you in 2025, folks. I gotta say, I'm already very excited about the next handful of interviews I have lined up, and most importantly, just take some time to be with yourself and care about yourself. Happier days are always ahead. Spooky Show out.